Senators took the entire day to focus on ideas to prevent gun violence.
Today, a House committee is debating two bills that would restrict access to firearms.
So lawmakers are one step closer to passing several new gun control bills. 4 made it through the Public Safety Committee today.
Heard about 14 or 15 different bills related to firearms. Several of them were gun control bills.
Hearing today on gun control bills. One of the bills passed out of committee is a ban on semi-automatic assault-style weapons.
Historic gun control measures are now on the governor's desk, waiting to be signed.
They are part of a nearly $900 million public safety bill.
14 gun bills, one single hearing, 7.5 hours of testimony, debate, and political maneuvering that could reshape firearm rights for millions of people in an entire state. And buried in the middle of all of it, something genuinely shocking happened. A bill author was publicly corrected because he didn't even understand what was inside his own legislation. That's not a joke. That actually happened. And it's just one piece of a much bigger story that unfolded on Friday the 13th. And yes, the date is fitting. So let's break down everything that went down in this marathon committee hearing, bill by bill, what advanced, what stalled, and most importantly, what comes next. Because some of these proposals are far more extreme than most people realize, and the political dynamics at play here are creating a situation that could go in directions nobody expected. Let's start with the big picture. The Minnesota Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee scheduled what can only be described as a mega hearing. They crammed roughly 14 to 15 different firearms-related bills into a single session. Some of these were gun control proposals. Others dealt with violent crime, school safety, and threat assessment protocols. But the gun control bills dominated the conversation, and several of them advanced out of committee despite fierce opposition. Here's what makes this situation particularly intense. The Minnesota Senate is controlled by the DFL, which means Democrats hold the majority on every single committee. So when a vote goes along party lines, gun control wins every time at the committee level. That's exactly what happened with most of these bills. But getting out of committee is only the first step in a long journey, and there are real reasons to believe many of these proposals will hit a wall. More on that in a moment, because the political math here is fascinating. Let's walk through the individual bills and what happened to each one. First up, Senate File 514, which would establish an Office of Gun Violence Prevention inside the Minnesota Department of Health. This is essentially a permanent bureaucratic infrastructure dedicated to framing firearm ownership as a public health crisis. It passed out of committee on a voice vote along party lines. Every Democrat voted for it, every Republican voted against it. It now heads to the Senate Health and Human Services Committee for its next hearing, which hasn't been scheduled yet. Next, Senate File 1580, which appropriates $1 million to the Commissioner of Public Safety to fund a Minnesota-based research center focused on gun violence. Now here's the detail that matters. The only research center in the state that meets the criteria outlined in this bill is the Violence Project at Hamline University. And that organization doesn't just conduct research, they actively advocate for gun control as part of their mission. So this bill would essentially use taxpayer money to fund a gun control advocacy organization under the banner of academic research. This one also advanced along party lines, this time heading to the Senate Finance Committee. Senate File 2320 is a partial repeal of preemption. Now, preemption is the legal principle that prevents local governments from creating a patchwork of different gun laws across the state. This bill doesn't fully repeal preemption, which is different from what was heard in the House previously. Instead, it specifically targets city, county, and township governments, giving them the power to prohibit carrying firearms in government-owned or leased buildings and on government land. It advanced on a party line voice vote and heads to the Senate State and Local Government Committee. And here's something worth noting. Opponents of this bill were not allowed to testify because the committee said the schedule was full. That's going to be a recurring theme. Senate File 3572 is focused on firearms in schools. This bill does several things. It repeals the ability of a school principal to grant permission to a permit holder to carry a firearm on school property. It imposes extremely specific storage requirements for anyone who has a firearm in their vehicle on school grounds. And it prohibits firearms at any activity sponsored by the Minnesota State High School League. During testimony on this bill, something remarkable happened. The bill's own author was corrected on his understanding of what the bill actually contained. He apparently didn't fully grasp the provisions of the legislation he was sponsoring. Additionally, a key committee member made claims about the bill that were also factually incorrect and had to be corrected during the hearing. This bill advanced to the Senate Education Policy Committee on a roll call vote. Now let's talk about one that stalled, at least for now. Senate File 3631 would ban lawful carry at the state capitol complex. Opponents were again told they couldn't testify because the schedule was full. But here's where it gets interesting. One Democrat on the committee publicly stated she would not support this bill. That single defection was enough to change the math because without a unanimous party line vote, the bill couldn't advance. So instead of voting it down, the committee laid the bill over. That means it's still alive. They could bring it back for a vote at any future committee meeting, or they could try to slip its language into a larger omnibus public safety bill. So this one isn't dead, it's sleeping, and it needs to be watched carefully. Senate File 3655 is the big one. This is a comprehensive ban on the sale, transfer, and possession of nearly all semi-automatic rifles and any magazine holding more than 10 rounds. A different version of this bill was heard in the House a few weeks ago, but this Senate version covers the same ground. There is a grandfathering clause, but it comes with strings that many gun owners would find unacceptable. If you currently own one of these firearms or magazines, you can keep them, but only under strict conditions. You cannot sell or transfer them to anyone. You must obtain a certificate at an as yet undetermined cost. You must agree to allow law enforcement to inspect your home for safe storage compliance without a warrant, and you can only keep the firearm at your residence or at a licensed firing range. Read those conditions again carefully. Warrantless home inspections as a condition of keeping property you already legally own. That's what's on the table here. This bill advanced to the Senate Finance Committee on a 6-3 roll call vote. All 6 DFL members voted yes. All 3 Republicans present voted no. One Republican senator was absent. He was participating remotely and may have experienced a technical issue when the vote was called, but even if he had voted, the outcome would have been 6-4. The bill still would have advanced. So this one moves forward to finance, where the discussion will center on the financial implications of the legislation, which largely revolve around the costs of criminalizing gun owners who don't comply with the new restrictions. Senate File 3661, dealing with so-called ghost guns, was moved to a separate hearing on the following Monday, so it wasn't addressed in Friday's session. And finally, Senate File 4200, which retroactively reenacts a complete ban on binary triggers, making the ban effective back to January 1st, 2025. Now, the backstory here is crucial. The original ban on binary triggers was passed in 2024, but it was struck down in a lawsuit and permanently enjoined by a court. That means binary triggers are currently legal in the state. The case is on appeal with a hearing scheduled for March 25th. This new bill attempts to simply pass the ban again as if the court ruling didn't happen. It passed on a voice vote along party lines, and critically, this bill does not need to go through any additional committees. It can be called directly to the Senate floor for a full vote at any time. Opponents were once again not permitted to testify. Now let's talk about what happens next, because this is where the political dynamics get really compelling. For the bills that were sent to other committees, there will be additional hearings. There will be opportunities to submit written testimony and potentially testify in person. But the scope of those hearings is limited to the jurisdiction of the receiving committee. So when the semi-automatic rifle ban goes to finance, the only topic on the table is the financial impact. Not whether the ban is constitutional, not whether it's good policy, but specifically what it will cost. Most of that cost analysis centers on enforcement, meaning putting gun owners in prison. For bills that can go directly to the Senate floor, like the binary trigger ban, the timeline is much shorter. Typically, there's only a couple days' notice before a floor vote is scheduled. But here's the part of the story that changes everything. Even if every single one of these bills passes the full Senate, they still have to pass the Minnesota House, and the House is currently deadlocked. The seat count between Republicans and Democrats is tied. That means passing gun control through the House would require either unanimous Democratic support with some procedural maneuvering, or it would require a Republican member to cross over and vote for gun control. Neither scenario is likely, but neither is impossible. And here's perhaps the most revealing development. Democratic leadership essentially admitted in a podcast recorded just this past weekend that they may not even have the votes to pass these bills on the Senate floor right now. Their own caucus isn't fully unified. If they can't get every single Democratic senator on board, the bills don't advance even in the chamber they control. So it's entirely possible that some or all of these proposals stall before they ever reach a floor vote. That doesn't mean the threat is gone. It means the pressure has to stay on. Every constituent who contacts their representative matters. Every piece of written testimony matters. Every public statement of opposition matters. Because the moment that pressure lets up is the moment a wavering legislator decides it's safe to vote yes. The legal angle is also significant here. Multiple lawsuits are either active or being prepared related to these issues. The binary trigger case is already in the courts. And if something like the semi-automatic rifle ban were to somehow become law, legal challenges would be immediate and aggressive. The constitutional questions surrounding warrantless home inspections alone would likely generate significant judicial scrutiny. So to sum up where things stand, multiple gun control bills advanced out of the Senate Judiciary Committee along party lines. Several are heading to additional committees before they can reach the Senate floor. One, the binary trigger reenactment, can go directly to the floor. One, the capital carry ban, stalled because of a single Democratic defection. And the overall political landscape suggests that even if these bills clear the Senate, the tied House represents a formidable barrier. The next few weeks will determine whether any of these proposals gain real momentum or whether they gradually lose steam as political realities set in. Either way, this is one of the most consequential legislative sessions for firearm rights in Minnesota's recent history, and how it unfolds will likely influence gun policy debates in other states for years to come. Stay informed, stay engaged, and pay attention, because this story is far from over. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.